and clutter can kill. Learned that as I was trying to shove stuff up into the attic and the ladder kicked out from under me. It is. You know, my wife yelling at me, and I said, just get the ladder underneath me again. You can yell at me later because I got about 3 more seconds and I'm gonna go. All right, we got roll call and we're all set. Would ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Augustine, second Yankee. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Approval of November 1. I'm assuming that's supposed to be the minutes.
Yes.
We have a motion for that. Poppy, I have a second. Haskey, any corrections, discussion in the regards to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Fabulous. Public comment. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak to the committee? I see only 2 potential people, or well, I guess 3, unless Corp Counsel had something to say. Anyone wish to speak to the committee? Anyone wish to speak? No takers. Administrators report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have in front of you the personnel report. It's much more full than what it usually is month to month, but this is not uncommon when we get near the end of the year. We're hiring temporary help out at Winter Park. We have resignations, we have retirements, and then we also then have folks that will be changing jobs as well as recruitments. So all of those will kind of touch base with at a little bit further down in the agenda, unless there's any specific questions regarding the personnel report.
Any questions on the personnel report for Mr. Felt? Very well. We will move on then to approval of filling position vacancies. We begin with account clerk 2.
So Julie Repitz has put in her retirement letter. I forget how many years, but she was the account clerk down at Highway. So they would like to refill that position. I did have a conversation with the office manager and highway commissioner regarding job duties and whether duties could be reassigned or consolidated. And at this present time, from my estimation and my recommendation is that we will continue to fill this position, which is a full-time position. And then there are 2 half-time administrative support positions as well.
Do I have a motion? Supervisor Poppy, is there a second? Supervisor Ramdan, discussion of that position and a motion. Yes, sir. Supervisor Poppy.
I did also have a chance to talk to Todd Every regarding this, and if there was any way of combining some of these duties, and basically with the other 2 are part-time. So I think it's a needed position.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We move on to highway worker.
Actually, there will be 2. We have 2 retirements. Tom Cruise and Neil Leduc are retiring. We have for those that do not have the history, at one time there was, Gary, for Tom, 40 some, and we have now brought it down to 23.
It was 85.
Well, so the number of workers, I do not believe that with the amount of work that the highway department does, that there should be any reduction in the number of highway workers. So I strongly recommend the filling of those 2 positions.
Did you say the names of those retiring were Tom Cruise and Neil the Duck?
Yes, DOCQ, if I'm correct.
Tom Cruise, how do you?
KRUSE. Yeah, sorry. No, it's not risky. No, we're not involved in risky business, but we do need a few good men. Okay, I'll stop now.
Did Neil turn in his?
I believe so.
It hadn't as of Thursday.
Well, I know it's coming.
I know it's coming, but
Yeah.
I don't know if he turned in an official letter.
Yeah. Bless
Somebody
you.
makes a motion that's approved.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know he's going to, but I didn't know if he had turned his letter in.
We have a motion. Supervisor Augustine, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Supervisor Poppy. So we have a motion to hire those two, to
Let's
fill
move in.
those two positions. Any discussion? Supervisor Yankee.
There must be temporary workers that are running the plows that are probably gonna apply, huh?
Well, usually the ones that are snowplow drivers in the winter,
Are retired.
they're usually retired.
Yeah, retired employees. I
So
doubt it.
they come in and they'll help out with plowing, but they don't want to come back full time.
Okay. And I think we have a couple on our eligibility list yet. So
Interesting. Any other questions? Any other discussion on them, on the motion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
I,
Social worker.
Again, we have two positions there. One is a resignation in the CCS or Behavioral Health Unit. Anna La Luzerne is resigning to take on another position. And we've had, and I believe it had already been approved, but I'm just putting it on here anyways, is there is a social work in the Child Protective Services Unit that is also looking to be filled. We had been holding off on that, but it's now time to pull the trigger. And again, with all of these positions, they are all budgeted with funding for them. These are not new positions.
So one of these is leaving, or resigning.
Correct.
Okay. Having trouble working with the director down there, or?
Well, no, actually, I think the real problem is while they really like the current director, I think they're still scarred from the former director.
They're still missing the former.
Yes, they're still scarred.
All right, is there a motion? Supervisor Yankee, second by Supervisor Haskey. Discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
I,
Assistant Clerk of Courts.
Okay, we have a resignation by Linda Burwich. Is that how it's, I always screw it up. Bakovich, see, I always get them always screwed up. She is moving to take on a better position. She was able to get a higher wage. She had been with us 6 years. I can tell you, you cannot have two people in the clerk of court's office. If court is going on or if someone's on vacation, just the manpower standpoint, it can't work. So again, I am recommending the filling of this position.
Do I have a motion? Supervisor Haskey. Do I have a second? Supervisor Augustine. Discussion? No further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. Investigator, Sheriff Department.
We have Mr. Steve Hain, who is retiring after a long and dedicated service. We have 3 investigators. With the county and the number of cases that we have, it's surprising how a small county our size can have the number of cases that we have. And so therefore, we have had 3 since I've been here, which is over 7 years. I recommend the filling of the investigator.
There a motion? Supervisor Teske, is there a second? Supervisor Augustine, discussion? Supervisor Teske.
Do you think that will be filled internally?
Yes, typically investigator positions are filled internally. They're filled with someone from within the patrol division. And then what happens is there's a cascading effect. From there, then a patrol position comes open, and usually that is filled from someone within the jail.
Supervisor Poppy.
the investigator position, we have 3, correct? Do we need 3?
Let's do this. Yeah. Jeff, if you'll share
Yeah.
your,
Yeah, oh, I get to save a few steps. That's awesome. It was a rough morning. a rough run. Yes, we have three. One is committed to the drug task force. So that is one that's uniquely set up for narcotics. The other two are general investigators for everything like we've seen lately in regards to, child abuse, sexual assaults, and so on. This specific investigator is also in charge of all of our evidence processing, everything going off to crime labs, everything going for the courts when they need evidence, retrieved, brought to the courts for hearings for evidence. So it's not just an investigator, like they're just kind of waiting for a call to come in. There's a lot of other things that are in constant motion when it comes to existing cases. They also do all of our background checks in our continuous hiring process. They're the ones doing all of the recruitment, or not so much recruitment, but all the inflow as far as PT tests, the psych or the after interview tests and things like that. So yeah, I mean, with what we've seen, they're hauling. I mean, they're in constant motion, those three.
So this gentleman that's retiring is the drug investigator? Is
No,
that correct?
he's our general one. He's our crime, our evidence technician, as well as our evidence processing supervisor. He's in charge of all that. So we're going to have somebody fill that one. And then again, as was stated, it cascades all the way down. So it's another thought, much like when, Chief Deputy retired. Another way to approach this, if possible, is that it's, the filling of Investigator Haynes' position and then all the subsequent ones, because this is going to cascade. Somebody from patrols going to fill that, somebody from jail dispatch going to come over to patrol, and they'll ultimately result in a new hire, right? Same thing with the one coming up on patrol. So that'll be an internal patrol, which will result in a new hire. So however you want to handle it, typically when we have these higher level ones retiring, then we try to get it where not only that opening is filled, but, just to kind of expedite the process is everything that results from it. In the end, it's just it results in one net hire. But there's a lot of movement in the process that if we have to keep coming back every time to say, okay, now this person took their job, is it okay if we fill that job? That whole process. But I'll leave that up to this committee.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion, questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Radio operator jailer.
We have two positions there. We have the resignation of Caleb Van Lannen and Caleb Shanley. Again, I'm not sure about Caleb, but I know that Caleb was looking to actually get out of law enforcement completely. I know that the sheriff is starting to work and have interviews as we speak to move that forward. These are, our ground floor officers. Definitely strongly recommend we fill these two positions.
Is there a motion? Supervisor Yonke? Is there a second? Supervisor Haskey, discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Child Support Manager.
Patrol officer, please.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
So many, I
yeah.
glossed over one.
Understandable, Mr. Chair. Aaron Schley has resigned. He's taking a position in another department as a patrol officer. Then that will leave an opening, which will most likely be filled internally through a jailer dispatcher position. And then again, we'll probably move that through. I again recommend the approval of the filling the patrol officer position.
Scott, where did you say he was going?
I didn't.
Oh, is he within the county or is
No.
he to another county
Correct.
or city or village or whatever?
Correct. Out of the county.
State, country. Is there a motion? Supervisor Romden, second. Supervisor Augustine, is there any other discussion, questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Now we move on to Child Support Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Cindy Kudik, after 30-some years of service, I think she's the second longest second longest serving employee in the county. She has tendered her retirement. She will be retiring in January. I am not exactly sure how I want to move forward, but regardless, I know that there will need to be 3 positions within the child support agency, and therefore will be needing the filling of that position, and so recommend that the position be filled.
Do I have a motion?
She's gonna be filled as the new position will be a manager.
I'm not sure how I want to go forward with that just yet. I'm having some conversations.
That's the way it's listed here as a manager.
Correct. But, and so I'm not exactly sure when I will fill it. Because again, I want to have conversations. Could there be consolidations? Could there be reassignments, those types of things?
Do I have a motion? Supervisor Haskey, second by Romden. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Takes care of filling of positions and vacancies for the night. We discussed future staffing, potential resignations.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted us to have a general or even if it's not a conversation, I kind of wanted to give a heads up as to what might be coming into the future. As we are aware, there will be elections, and a perfect example is we know that our current corporation counsel, human services director, is throwing his hat in the ring for county judge. If he were to be successful, then I will need to be looking for a new corporation counsel and more than likely a new human services director. The corporation counsel currently is a half-time position. The human services director is a full-time position. How that will all move forward, I am unsure, only because it all depends on who the applicants are and how we can move forward with that. But I wanted people to be aware of that. I know that there are at least one other department head that has a number of years in that is also close to retirement. They have not indicated to me yet that they're going to pull the trigger, but that could be happening sometime shortly. In that same respect, this isn't specifically jail staff, but we do know that we have a number of patrol officers that more than likely within the next 5 years will be retiring, as well as they will be eligible and they can retire. We do have a few others that are long-term employees, a couple, at least one in the human services department. So I'm just wanting to people aware that, as always, staffing is always kind of in flux, and therefore, as that comes forward, I will be making the committee aware as to what may be there. But as always, whenever there is a retirement or a resignation, I try to make it a point to do a review of the position and the duties and see if there's efficiencies that can be achieved. And I always want to be very cognizant of staffing levels and make sure that we're trying to be lean, but not so lean that we're hurting ourselves.
Any questions, Supervisor Augustine?
Close to your mic, Aaron.
Oh, that would explain it. Seven, 6, 4. Well, this is cutting edge technology. Hey, it just project loudly.
Mr. Chair, if you'd like, I can even include the jail staff into this whole, oh, never mind.
Go ahead.
When we move forward in the future with all the staffing, with retirements and so forth and so on, you talked about running lean. Is there just something to look into in the future? Is there anything we could share with other counties, or I don't want to say other businesses, but certain positions that we could work with tri-counties around to possibly help out with staffing shortages in the future or anything along those lines?
I'm always, that's a great question, Supervisor Augustine, and I am always willing to look at that and have that discussion. I know that I meet on a irregular basis with county administrators and executives around this area, as well as I have Zoom meetings with other administrators throughout the state to see what they're doing. Some of the difficulties, and I'm not trying to say that I'm not interested, because I absolutely am, has to come from the logistics part of it, where what we need to do then is, if we're going to do something like that, that the work or the duties that are going to be done, at least with other counties, that the work can be done remotely, or that the physical location of that employee is less of an interest. As for other cities and municipalities, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, we can try to do that, but it's very difficult. Again, I think of parks employees, I think of public safety employees and the like. More often than not, the county pays more. And the most difficult part is then who has jurisdiction over that employee. The easier way to do it, and what has happened kind of for us, is that, and I'll give the city of Kewanee as an example. We are their IT department. We service their phones, we service their computers, we give them recommendations as to what to buy for computers. They're on our computer network, but in doing so, they have an annual contract or a contract with the county where they pay us annually for that, as well as time. So I'm going to assume or project at this time, Supervisor, is that if we were to do something like that, I would assume it would be more likely is that it would be a county staff person, and we would try to contract out part of that time to another municipality. We did try that a few years ago with the psychiatrist, and we tried to share that psychiatrist with Door County, but that was not a good fit. So, but that is a great question, and I'm always looking for that.
Any other questions in that regard? We'll move on to additional jail staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, more of a heads up, there's nothing that's needed to be done right now. As all of you are aware, we are in phase 3 of the jail study. And in doing that, we are looking at the layout of the facility, and then what are the staffing needs for that facility. Currently, we have discussion. There are 4 posts. There have always been 4 posts. I always want to be very clear when I say this. There's posts, there's positions, and there's people. So the 4 posts are master control in the jail, a pod officer in the jail, a booking officer, and a 911 dispatcher. Now, as for the positions and how that can all be done, we're trying to run as lean as possible and see if there's ways that we can share some of those duties, which therefore will allow us to have the lowest level of staffing possible, but still allows us to operate efficiently and correctly. So we're still having those discussions, but regardless, it is an absolute guarantee that if a new position, if a new facility is constructed, the county will need to hire more staff. What exactly that number is, I cannot give you that number at this present time, but it is an absolute guarantee that we will have to hire more staff. So I just want people to be aware of that as well. Sure, and I didn't see the sheriff doing this, so I'm the first one is master control in the jail. They're the ones that open the doors, close the doors. Their butt never leaves the seat. The second is the pod officer. That is an officer that will go about and do welfare checks as well as a variety of other duties. You have the booking officer post or the booking post. They're the ones that will help to process folks that will be coming into the jail, whether that's a receiving cell or the jail proper. And then finally is the 911 dispatch post. And that person is in the 911 dispatch center. And again, that person never leaves either.
Any questions? Moving on, rescinding of hiring freeze resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I am. Well, I'll give my pitch in a second or give some background. As you have the memo in your packet that talks about that roughly 7 years ago in 2014, the Personnel Committee at that time, the Personnel Advisory and Legislative Committee, the PAL, had approved a hiring freeze in July of 2014 due to, as a reaction to the announcement of the decommissioning of the nuclear power plant. That meant that all positions, if once they became empty, needed to have personnel approval before they could be filled. In September of that same year, they modified that policy that would allow for seasonal and LTE or temporary employees to not have to receive personnel committee approval. So we've been operating under this policy for the last 7 years, and it is my belief that this policy has more than outlived its usefulness. There's a number of different reasons why. I understand why the Personnel Committee did it back in 2014. They weren't sure what the economic impact of the closing of the power plant would be, and therefore wanted to make sure that from a budgetary and staffing standpoint, that they were being prudent and frugal. I put the few pages of the personnel policy in your packet as well. The current personnel policies basically say that if you have a budgeted position, that if it's a budgeted position, then you can fill that position if we were to remove the policy or the hiring freeze. Any new positions still must come before this committee for approval. So in that respect, I believe that the current personnel policy, if we were to remove the hiring freeze, still provides sufficient guidance and safeguards regarding staffing. The third reason that I believe the hiring freeze is a detriment is it unnecessarily delays the recruitment process. If what we have already known is that there will be resignations that will come, and it could be at least a week, sometimes as many as 4 weeks before the committee were to meet, and therefore allow for approval of putting forth a public notice to get applications. And finally, and this is probably the strongest one, we have not been adhering to the process consistently for a number of years now. The committee has at previous times, because of the budget, said, Scott, go ahead and move forward with filling of this position, even though that is not what is stated in the current policy. I know that there's always been some concern that the county could therefore go on a hiring binge. I can tell you that as long as I have been county administrator, that has not been the case. Again, we have personnel policies in place that would prevent that. They have to be budgeted positions. And I hope that I have demonstrated over my last 7 years that I am very cognizant of staffing levels and try to keep them as lean as possible. I find the hiring freeze to be a detriment. to helping to recruit folks. And therefore, we have delays. And in this day and age, especially with the labor pool the way it is, the sooner we can get out there and try to recruit people, the better for the county. I'm willing to answer any questions.
Questions? Discussion? Motion? Supervisor Ramdan.
Your microphone, Supervisor Rondon?
You might just grab Mr. Wisnicki's. It could be tomorrow morning before that thing comes up. As Supervisor Augustine demonstrated earlier. Go ahead.
Under where it's under item F on the, I think it's the second or third page that you handed out to us. What is the difference between the item 4 and 5 compared to what we're basically doing now, other than for unbudgeted or not budgeted positions? It seems to me that the current policy, even looking at that freeze section, approval of hiring still has to come through this committee still has final authority, at least the way I read this.
And how I read it, and if the Corporation Council would weigh in afterwards, I see that F1 basically says that if it's budgeted and non-supervisory and non-managerial, we can fill it. We don't have to go to oversight. We don't have to go to this committee. If it's budgeted, non-supervisor and non-managerial, not within the department, then if I approve, then it can move forward. All other vacancies that are not authorized, which means a department head, a supervisor, a manager, then that would either have to be given oversight committee approval or this committee approval.
Does that clarify, Supervisor Ramdan, or does Corp Counsel wish to weigh in on that? Or does he need time to study?
I think Mr. Felt's interpretation is correct. If it's budgeted, non-supervisory, non-managerial, it can be filled by the administrative team, we'll say. If it's not budgeted, or if it is a managerial or supervisory position, then they're going to need further approval.
Okay.
I have a comment here.
Supervisor Poppy.
I think the current policy that's in place right now has worked well. I would like to see it stay as a policy. That's my feeling.
Other questions, discussion? Is there any desire, any motion?
I will just throw out there, only as a challenge, Supervisor Poppy, the current policy isn't being followed. So in that respect, are you therefore saying, Supervisor, that if we're going to follow the policy, that from now on we will delay filling of positions because until they are approved by this committee, then we shouldn't be advertising, because we shouldn't be trying to fill positions that have not received approval?
I'm saying with the current policy that's in place right now, we have worked with you to make adjustments.
Again, I will challenge, and with all respect, Supervisor Poppy, I haven't been following the policy. And while I have been getting tacit approval from this committee, the committee then is not following their own policy.
All right, Supervisor Yonke.
In law enforcement, we approved filling or at least hunting for people in an eligibility list, right? So we weren't following this policy.
Correct.
Yeah.
And to a certain degree, Supervisor Yonke, what the oversight committee does is irrelevant, because the policy says that the approval must come from this committee. Doesn't matter what the oversight committee says. Approval must come from this committee.
Yeah, we had a problem with being delayed I'm looking for people.
And that's where, and I understand some of the anxiety or the concern from members regarding this. But again, I guess I look at it this way. If we budgeted the money for these positions, and we've budgeted the number of positions in the budget as well, if we budgeted both the number of staff people and the money to pay those staff people, then why do we need additional hoops to jump through to fill those positions? Especially as an administrator, I believe that I have more than demonstrated my willingness to delay filling of positions, or for that matter, eliminating positions. I do not believe that adding an additional approval by this committee to fill a position that is both budgeted from a staff standpoint and from a monetary standpoint adds anything to the process but delay.
Supervisor Augustine.
Previously to 2014, I don't think you were here, Administrator Feld.
Correct.
Was there, do some other supervisors know, was there issues that this policy was put in place, that there was committees hiring people out of the non-budgetary? Or, I mean, was it, if it wasn't an issue before, I don't see it being an issue moving forward.
I can speak to the minutes of May 14th of 2014, Supervisor Augustine, and I'll quote straight from them. Because of the nuclear plant closing during the next 5 years, the financial impact will be great. There will be a shortfall of approximately $2 million. We have the 5th highest tax rate in Wisconsin. We don't want to increase taxes. After discussion, a change in the hiring policy was agreed on. A motion was made by Bob Widener and seconded by John Pagel to require approval of the Personnel Committee prior to hiring for any county position. Motion carried. So how I read and interpret the minutes is that this was a reaction to the announcement of the decommissioning of the Kewanee Power Station.
Any other questions? Is there?
I was going to say, my recollection is that prior to this, that the non-budgeted run-of-the-mill staff positions were filled by Mr. Dorner as they became vacant. And I don't recall him coming to personnel for approval to fill them when they came vacant. That's my recollection.
Supervisor Romden or Poppy, you guys were on here then, weren't you? Some of you guys go
Yeah,
back a ways. Nobody remembers though, huh?
I just remember, I think, if I
It's a long
remember
time
correctly,
ago.
when I came on the board anyway, there was a hiring freeze in place. But this, I think, just expanded on it to say that, okay, we have this freeze in place, but before any hiring is done, while this freeze is on, which I guess it still is, the Personnel Committee would have the final approval on those positions, any position. That's the way I recall it.
Sheriff Joski?
If I could, I'm just chiming in. Yeah, I was here before all the freezing and everything. And I mean, there was still a methodical means by which we, posted these positions or approved these positions. It wasn't, willy-nilly, me as a sheriff or even, in some side room with the administrator at the time. It was definitely, well thought out. My biggest comment is in our employment reality today, the environment today, I think we want to caution against, burdening down this process. I mean, the sheriff's department probably is the department that cycles through the most amount of people and is constantly hiring. And I can tell you that we want to remain as nimble and as agile as we can be to make sure that we get a hold of the best candidates. If we bog this down in bureaucracy, we're going to lose potential candidates. We've already found out just in this process with this eligibility list, we start off at 15. I mean, we're hoping to come out of these interviews with 5. And as you saw with the early requests, we've got a few positions to fill. So I'm very grateful that we were allowed to do the eligibility list that allows us to lean forward in these times and start these processes. But yeah, if it gets bogged down we've seen it already. We're all sending, Peggy will send us an email. Hey, we just updated your interview list. You just dropped another 2. Hey, you just dropped another 1. That's the reality of the employment market we're in. So as a county, I think we want to remain as agile and nimble and quick responding as we can be without being reckless. Absolutely.
Is there any motion? Supervisor Augustine,
I'll make a motion to rescind the hiring freeze resolution.
Supervisor Haskey, second. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Can I have a show of hands? Okay, all opposed? So three in favor, 2 opposed, correct? Did I count that right? Supervisor Chesky, did you abstain?
Yeah, because I don't know which way to go.
Okay, so we have 3 in favor, 2 opposed, 1 abstention. Motion carries.
We need 7 votes.
You need 4 people.
Oh, that's right. I can vote on this one.
I'm only an attorney, but I think.
Well, you are, yeah. Supervisor Teske, do you wish to change your vote or not? I mean, submit a vote. So, yes, in favor of the motion to rescind. Make sure I got you right. So 4 yes, 2 nay, motion carries. Hiring freeze is rescinded. Approval of agreement and promissory note, Bug Tussle Wireless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have in front of you a copy of a draft of an agreement. If you remember back in March of 2020, we received a $1.4 million grant from the PSC to start putting fiber to the towers, the northern half of the towers for the most part, from the Bug Tussle Towers. This agreement would have us have similar terms as what we had from our first contract with Bug Tussle. The reason that we're doing this contract now is I had communicated to Bug Tussle that the county was not interested in doing any type of contract until we started to see some towers come online and people getting service. They have started to do that. This grant agreement would be a loan of roughly $2.2 million that would again go 12 years. Right now, we have it at 3%. It may go a little bit less, like 2.8, only because from a cost issuance standpoint, that is kind of what the market is going for from a debt standpoint. We will have the final draft of the contract for the county board. I do not see any major changes to this contract than what you have in front of you. I'm going to guess that the only change that you may have would be the percentage rate of, instead of being 3%, that it may be closer to 2.8.
Questions? Supervisor Romden.
Where is the $2.2 million that we're going to give them coming from?
I'm going to do it a couple different ways. Well, predominantly one way, Mr. Romden, I'm sorry, Supervisor Romden, I apologize, is it is my intent to use the ARPA dollars to do broadband, since that is something that is very eligible. And so 2.2 out of the 4 could be used for ARPA dollars. And instead of using it from the Economic Development Fund, that does allow us additional funds to be used in any capacity as we see fit, where the ARPA dollars have some specific restrictions. So it would come from the ARPA dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
And the only motion would be to recommend.
Motion to recommend. Supervisor Haskey. Is there a second? Supervisor Poppy, second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next meeting.
I am not sure there might be a few other county employees that may know this. Will the office be open on the 3rd? That's the first Monday of the month, but yes. Otherwise, so our typical first Monday would be January 3rd. If that is too early, we could then put it to January 10th.
Is there a reason we wouldn't go to January 3rd? Are you still hung over from the new year by then, Supervisor Poppy? That's 2 days later.
Well, it is a
Quite party planned, huh?
it's a multi-day binger, so you never know.
2021 been hard on you. All right, it's January 3rd. Do we want to do January the 3rd or do we? January the 3rd, do I have a motion for that? Supervisor Poppy, second by Romden.
Okay.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
One quick question.
Yes, sir.
Is this the same contract that the entire board will see at the county board meeting?
Yes,
So
Supervisor.
we'll have an opportunity, I'll have an opportunity to read through this before.
Absolutely,
So in case
Supervisor.
there's any questions, I don't think.
And
there
like
will
I
be,
said,
but-
if there are any major, I don't foresee any major changes, but even changes, we'll get that to you before the board meeting.
Very good. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Supervisor Romden, second by Haskey. Nobody wants to leave. We're having too much fun. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're
6:47.
You didn't happen to watch the Badgers or Cats?
I did not have to watch that.
I was shocked that they beat them by as much as they did.
Yeah, Marquette's not been bad.
Oh.
Overall.